5 years of marriage. That's about 35 in dog years, or roughly the lifespan of most people's attention spans when I start talking about network infrastructure. My name is Warren Collins, and I fix computers for a living, which means I spend most of my time explaining to middle managers why their laptop won't connect to Wi-Fi when they haven't turned it on. Tonight was different, though. Tonight was our anniversary, and I'd actually put effort into something that didn't involve troubleshooting someone else's incompetence. The dining room looked decent, I'll admit. Candles flickered on our registry table, the one Celia had obsessed over for 3 months before our wedding, measuring it 17 times to ensure it fit perfectly in our suburban Massachusetts home. Wine breathed in glasses that cost more than my first car. Steaks rested under foil, cooked to the precise medium rare that Celia preferred. "This is lovely," she said, sliding into her chair with that smile she'd perfected for client presentations at her HR firm. Everything about Celia was presentation ready. Blonde hair that never moved without permission, makeup that could survive a hurricane, and clothes that whispered expensive without shouting nouveau riche. I'd fallen for that smile once, back when I thought it was genuine. 5 years deserves something special, I replied, pouring wine with the steady hand of a man who'd spent months discovering exactly how special our marriage had become. She fidgeted with her napkin. Celia never fidgeted. She was the type who planned spontaneity 3 weeks in advance. "Warren, we need to talk." Those 4 words, the relationship equivalent of, "we need to discuss your performance" in corporate speak. I'd been expecting them since March, when I'd found her phone syncing to our shared cloud account. Amazing how technology betrays us in the end. All those late-night messages to Trent Parker, her ex-boyfriend from college, the gym owner with abs that could grate cheese and a brain that couldn't. "About what?" I asked, cutting into my steak with surgical precision. Her green eyes, contacts, though she'd never admit it, darted everywhere except my face. "About us, about where we are. We're in our dining room, eating anniversary dinner. The GPS on your phone can confirm our location if you're confused." She laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "You know what I mean." I did know. I'd known since I'd read her message to Trent about missing his protein shake demonstrations, and how her husband was too busy with his computer stuff to notice anything anymore. I'd known since I'd seen her delete entire conversation threads, thinking she was covering her tracks. I'd known since she'd started working late on Tuesdays, the same day Trent posted Instagram stories from his gym's advanced training sessions. But knowing and acting are different beasts entirely. I'd chosen to wait, to watch, to let her dig the hole deeper. Some people call it patience. I call it strategic planning. "I still have feelings for my ex," she said, the words tumbling out like she'd been practicing them. "I need to explore them." There it was, the confession I'd been waiting for, the moment she'd been building toward for months of sneaking around, thinking she was clever. I took another bite of steak, chewed slowly, swallowed. "Go ahead," I said. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. She'd been expecting tears, maybe. Shouting, certainly. Pleading, possibly. The kind of dramatic scene she could later describe to her friends as Warren being impossible, or him not understanding my needs. Instead, she got 2 words delivered with the emotional intensity of a weather report. "That's it?" Her voice climbed an octave. "That's all you have to say?" "What would you like me to say? You've made your decision. I'm not going to waste energy fighting for someone who's already mentally packed her bags." Her perfectly applied foundation couldn't hide the flush creeping up her neck. "I thought don't you want to work on this? Don't you care?" I set down my fork and looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman who'd promised to love, honor, and cherish, who'd stood in front of our friends and family and vowed to forsake all others, who'd spent the last 6 months doing everything except that. "Celia, you've been texting Trent since March. You've been meeting him for coffee twice a week. You told him 3 weeks ago that you were ready to see where things could go if you were single. You've been exploring your feelings for months. I'm just giving you permission to stop pretending you haven't been. The color drained from her face like water from a broken sink. How did you... Shared cloud account, remember? The one you insisted on so we could stay connected and share our lives completely. Turns out, when you share everything, you actually share everything. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For someone who made a living managing human resources, she seemed remarkably short on words. I can explain. Don't. I stood up, collecting my plate. You want to explore your feelings for Trent? Explore away. I won't stand in your way. Where are you going? To put this in the refrigerator. Good steak shouldn't go to waste, even if anniversaries do. When I returned from the kitchen, she was still sitting there, staring at her untouched meal like it might contain answers. I don't understand you, she said. That's been clear for a while now. Most husbands would fight for their marriage. Most wives wouldn't need fighting for. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Good. Maybe a little honesty would cut through that perfectly constructed facade. I'll need some time, she said, to figure things out. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. That wasn't entirely true, of course. I'd be here, but I wouldn't be the same man she was leaving behind. That version of Warren, the one who fixed her laptop without complaint, who listened to her work drama without judgment, who believed her lies without question. He was already gone. The new version had plans. She went upstairs to pack, moving around our bedroom like she was defusing a bomb. I could hear drawers opening and closing, hangers scraping against the closet rod. The sounds of a marriage dissolving into luggage. My phone buzzed, a text from Derek, my best friend, and the owner of Murphy's Tavern downtown. How'd the anniversary dinner go? I typed back. She's leaving to explore her feelings for her ex. 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, appeared again. Jesus, you okay? Never better. Want to grab a drink tomorrow? Hell yes. I'll keep the good stuff behind the bar. Another buzz. This one from Noelle Graham, Celia's best friend since college. The irony wasn't lost on me that she was texting while Celia packed upstairs. Heard you two were having a romantic evening. Hope it's magical. I stared at the message for a long moment. Noelle. Sweet, funny, perpetually single Noelle, who taught 4th grade and baked cookies for school fundraisers. Who'd been subtly flirting with me at parties for months, while Celia was too busy texting Trent to notice. Who'd asked pointed questions about my marriage during our last neighborhood barbecue. Interesting timing for a check-in text. Magical isn't the word I'd use, I replied. Celia's decided to pursue other opportunities. The response came faster than I expected. Oh my God, Warren. Are you okay? Do you need company? I looked toward the stairs, listening to my wife of 5 years pack her bags to chase a man who posted gym selfies with inspirational quotes about grinding and staying hungry. Actually, yes, I could use a friend tonight. On my way, wine or whiskey. Surprise me. Celia appeared in the doorway 20 minutes later, dragging a suitcase that had been gathering dust in our closet since our honeymoon. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater, her casual but still attractive outfit that she wore when she wanted to look approachable. I'm going to stay at my parents' for a while, she said. Of course she was. Richard and Patricia Hartwell, who lived in a colonial mansion in the expensive part of town, and still introduced their 33-year-old daughter as our little princess, who'd never quite warmed to their son-in-law, the IT manager, despite his steady income and lack of criminal record. I'll call you in a few days, she continued, once I've had time to think. Sure. She hesitated at the door, like she was waiting for something. A last-minute plea, maybe. A dramatic gesture. Some sign that I was devastated by her departure. Instead, I walked over and held the door open for her. Let me help you with that bag. Her eyes widened. You're not even angry. Would you prefer that I was? I'd prefer that you cared enough to be something. I smiled then, the kind of smile I used when explaining to users that their urgent problem could have been solved by reading the instruction manual. Oh, Celia, I care more than you know. She stared at me for another moment, then wheeled her suitcase out into the October night. I watched her load it into her BMW, the one she'd insisted on leasing because image matters in my business, and drive away toward her parents' house and whatever future she thought she was choosing. The doorbell rang 15 minutes later. Noelle stood on my front porch, holding a bottle of wine and wearing a concerned expression that looked far more genuine than anything I'd seen from my wife in months. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she'd thrown on jeans and a sweater that actually looked casual instead of calculated. I brought Pinot Grigio, she said, and chocolate chip cookies from yesterday's batch. You didn't have to come over. Yes, I did. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. What kind of friend would I be if I left you alone tonight? The kind who encourages her best friend to cheat on her husband, I thought, but didn't say. The kind who's been waiting for exactly this opportunity. But I was getting ahead of myself. The night was young, and revenge, like good wine, improves with proper timing. Want a toast to my newfound freedom? I asked, leading her toward the kitchen. She smiled, and unlike Celia's practiced expressions, this one reached her eyes. I thought you'd never ask. The morning after Celia left, I woke up on my couch with a mild headache and the lingering scent of Noelle's perfume on the throw pillows. She'd stayed until 2 a.m, listening to me recount the evening's events with the kind of attention Celia hadn't shown me in years. I can't believe she just came out and said it, Noelle had said, curled up in the armchair that used to be Celia's designated spot for reading fashion magazines. On your anniversary, no less. Believe it, I'd replied, pouring us both another glass of wine. She's been planning this conversation for weeks, probably practiced it in the mirror. And you just let her go? What was the alternative? Beg her to stay? Fight for the privilege of being her second choice? Noelle had shaken her head, her dark eyes flashing with something that might have been anger. She doesn't deserve you, Warren. She never did. Interesting perspective from someone who'd been Celia's maid of honor. Now, Saturday morning sunlight streamed through windows that suddenly seemed too bright, and my phone was buzzing like an angry wasp. 3 missed calls from Derek, 2 from my mother-in-law, Patricia, and a string of texts from various friends who'd apparently been briefed on the situation. The first text was from our neighbor, Janet Morrison, who lived across the street and collected gossip like some people collected stamps. Saw Celia leaving with a suitcase last night. Everything okay? Before I could respond, my phone rang. Patricia Hartwell's name appeared on the screen like a harbinger of doom. Warren, dear, we need to talk. Patricia had never called me dear in 5 years of marriage. This was new territory. Good morning, Patricia. How are you? Concerned, frankly. Celia arrived here last night quite upset. She says you two are having problems. I wandered into the kitchen, noting the 2 wine glasses still sitting by the sink. Evidence of Noelle's visit that I wasn't quite ready to explain. We're having a difference of opinion about the direction of our marriage. She mentioned something about needing space to think. Warren, marriage requires work. You can't just give up when things get difficult. The irony was so thick, I could have spread it on toast. My wife decides to explore her feelings for another man, and somehow I'm the one giving up. I'm not giving up, Patricia. I'm respecting her decision to pursue what makes her happy. A pause. In the background, I could hear Richard's voice, though I couldn't make out the words. Perhaps you could try harder to make her happy at home. A woman needs attention, Warren. Romance. When was the last time you surprised her with flowers? When was the last time she came home when she said she would? Another pause, longer this time. I don't appreciate your tone, young man. young man. I was 37 years old, owned my own home, and managed IT infrastructure for a company with 200 employees. But to the Hartwells, I'd always be the blue-collar interloper who'd somehow convinced their princess to slum it in middle-class suburbia. I apologize if I sound frustrated, Patricia. It's been a difficult night. Well, perhaps some time apart will help you both gain perspective. Celia needs to know that you're willing to fight for her. I'll keep that in mind. After I hung up, I made coffee and checked my other messages. Derek had sent a series of increasingly concerned texts, ending with, "Call me before I show up at your house with whiskey and poor judgment." I called him back. "Jesus, Warren, I've been worried sick. How are you holding up?" "Better than expected, actually. Noelle came over last night. We talked." "Noelle? Celia's Noelle?" "That's the one." A whistle. "Interesting development. How's she taking the news about her best friend running off with the gym rat?" "She seemed unsurprised." That was an understatement. When I'd told Noelle about Celia's confession, she'd nodded like I was confirming something she'd already suspected. No shock, no disbelief, no "but she loves you" protests that you'd expect from a loyal friend. "Want to grab lunch?" Derek asked. "I'm curious to hear more about this conversation." "Can't. I'm meeting Noelle for coffee in an hour." "Warren." "What?" "Be careful, man. I know you're hurting, but rebounding with your wife's best friend is playing with dynamite." "Who said anything about rebounding? We're just friends." "Right. And I'm just a bartender who accidentally owns a successful restaurant." After Derek hung up, I showered and changed into jeans and a sweater that Celia had always said made my eyes look mysterious. Mysterious. As if my brown eyes held secrets instead of just being the genetic result of two unremarkable parents. Noelle was already waiting at Grind Coffee when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups steaming on the table. She'd beaten me there by design, I realized, controlling the environment, choosing our seats, ordering my drink. The kind of subtle management that Celia had never bothered with because she'd assumed I'd always be available. "Vanilla latte, extra shot," Noelle said as I slid into the booth across from her. I remembered from the faculty mixer last spring. She remembered my coffee order from a party 8 months ago. When was the last time Celia had remembered anything about my preferences that didn't directly affect her? "How are you feeling today?" she asked, leaning forward with the kind of focused attention that made you feel like the most interesting person in the room. Surprisingly clear-headed, like I'd been walking around in fog and suddenly the sun came out. "That's good. That's healthy." She wrapped her hands around her mug, black coffee, no sugar, the drink of someone who didn't need artificial sweetness to make life palatable. "Have you heard from her?" "Her mother called. Apparently I'm not fighting hard enough for the marriage." Noelle's expression darkened. "Patricia always was a piece of work. Remember at your wedding reception when she made that toast about hoping Celia wouldn't have to settle for too long?" I did remember. I'd assumed she meant settle down, not settle for less. Amazing how context changes everything. "What do you think I should do?" I asked, though I already knew the answer I wanted to hear. "Honestly, I think you should let her go. Let her figure out what she really wants without you waiting in the wings like some kind of safety net." "That seems harsh." "Warren, she's been taking you for granted for years. You cook, you clean, you fix everything that breaks, you listen to her complain about work, and what do you get in return? A wife who's texting her ex-boyfriend about protein shakes." The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. This wasn't just friendly support. This was personal. "You don't like Celia very much, do you?" Noelle's cheeks flushed pink. "She's my friend. Of course I like her." "That's not what I asked." She stared into her coffee for a long moment, then looked up with eyes that held 5 years of carefully hidden resentment. "She doesn't appreciate what she has. She never has. Do you know what she said about you at her bachelorette party?" I braced myself. "She said you were safe. That marrying you meant she'd never have to worry about money or drama, but she'd probably get bored eventually and need to find excitement elsewhere. The words hit like a physical blow, but not because they were surprising, because they confirmed what I'd suspected for months. I'd never been her first choice, just her most practical one. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I hoped I was wrong, because I wanted her to prove me wrong, because... She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Because what? Because I've been half in love with you since your engagement party, and I didn't trust my own motives. The coffee shop seemed to shrink around us. Other conversations faded into white noise. Noelle's confession hung in the air like smoke, changing the chemical composition of everything that came after. Noelle? I know it's complicated and messy and probably the worst possible timing, but she left Warren. She made her choice, and it wasn't you. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the tone immediately. This is Trent. We should talk. I showed the message to Noelle, who read it with raised eyebrows. Well, that didn't take long. What are you going to do? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Nothing. Let him sweat. That's probably smart. Though I have to admit, I'm curious what he wants to say. Probably wants to make sure I'm not going to cause problems. Establish some kind of gentleman's agreement about sharing my wife. Ex-wife. Not yet. But soon. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching other people live their uncomplicated Saturday morning lives. A young couple shared a pastry at the next table, feeding each other bites with the kind of casual intimacy that Celia and I had lost somewhere between our 2nd and 3rd anniversaries. What happens now? Noelle asked. Now we wait. Celia gets her exploration time with Trent, discovers that the grass isn't actually greener, and comes home expecting everything to be exactly as she left it. And will it be? I looked at Noelle, really looked at her. Dark hair that moved naturally instead of being sculpted into submission. Brown eyes that reflected actual emotions instead of calculated responses. A smile that invited conversation instead of ending it. No, I said. It won't be. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Janet Morrison, our neighbor. Saw Noelle's car in your driveway this morning, just checking that everything's okay. The exclamation point fooled no one. Janet wasn't checking on my well-being. She was collecting intelligence for the neighborhood gossip network. I showed the text to Noelle, who laughed. Subtle as a brick through a window, that one. Should I be worried about your reputation? Warren, I'm 32, single, and I spend most of my free time grading papers and watching Netflix. A little scandal might be good for me. Another buzz. Derek this time. Celia's at Murphy's with some guy. Thought you should know. I felt Noelle tense beside me as I read the message aloud. That was fast, she said. Trent works quickly. Probably suggested they grab lunch to talk about their feelings, somewhere public where they could be seen together. Are you okay? Was I okay? My wife of 5 years was having lunch with her ex-boyfriend less than 24 hours after confessing her feelings for him. By all reasonable standards, I should be devastated. Instead, I felt something that might have been relief. You know what? I think I am okay. Better than okay. Good. Because I have an idea. I'm listening. There's a farmer's market downtown this afternoon. Live music, local vendors, the kind of wholesome community event that Celia always said was too pedestrian for her taste. Noelle's eyes sparkled with mischief. Want to go? Together? In broad daylight where everyone can see us? The implications were clear. If Celia was going to flaunt her relationship with Trent, I could certainly be seen enjoying myself with her best friend. That sounds perfect. Warren? Yeah? For what it's worth, I think she's making the biggest mistake of her life. I reached across the table and took her hand. Her fingers were warm and slightly calloused from years of writing on whiteboards and handling craft supplies. Real hands that did real work, not the manicured perfection that Celia maintained for client meetings. Her mistake, I said, might be the best thing that ever happened to me. The farmer's market was exactly the kind of event that Celia would have dismissed as too suburban or not our scene, which made it perfect for my purposes. Noelle and I wandered between stalls selling organic vegetables and handmade jewelry, her hand tucked naturally into the crook of my arm. She wore a sundress that actually looked like something you'd wear to a farmer's market, not a costume designed to broadcast your social status. "Try this," she said, offering me a sample of local honey from a vendor who looked like he'd stepped out of a catalog for authentic New England experiences. The honey was good, rich and complex, with floral notes that lingered on the tongue. Nothing like the processed sweetener that Celia bought at the grocery store because it was more convenient. "It's amazing," I told the vendor, a bearded man in his 50s who clearly took pride in his product. "Local wildflowers," he explained. "Bees know what they're doing better than we do most of the time." We bought a jar, along with fresh bread from another stall and cheese from a local farm, the kind of simple quality ingredients that could make a meal memorable without requiring a reservation or a credit card limit increase. "This is nice," Noelle said as we found a spot on the grass near the bandstand where a folk trio was setting up. "When's the last time you did something like this?" I tried to remember. Celia and I used to attend community events when we were first married, but somewhere along the way, her idea of weekend entertainment had shifted toward wine tastings at expensive restaurants and gallery openings where she could network with potential clients. "Too long," I admitted. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "They're still here, holding hands now. Thought you should know." I showed the message to Noelle, who shook her head in disgust. "She doesn't waste time, does she?" "Neither do we, apparently." She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Is that what this is? Revenge?" The question caught me off guard. Was it revenge, or was it something more honest? The recognition that I'd been settling for a marriage that had stopped working years ago? "I don't know," I said. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me. I don't want to be your way of getting back at Celia. I want to be your way of moving forward." Before I could respond, a familiar voice called out from across the market. "Warren, what a surprise!" Janet Morrison approached with the determined stride of someone who'd spotted a story worth investigating. She was flanked by two other neighborhood women whose names I could never remember, but whose capacity for gossip was legendary. "Janet," I said, standing to greet her. "Beautiful day for the market." "Isn't it just?" Her eyes fixed on Noelle with laser focus. "And Noelle, how lovely to see you. I didn't realize you two were friends." The pause before friends was loaded with implication. "We've known each other for years through Celia," Noelle replied smoothly. "Warren needed some company today, so I thought I'd drag him out of the house." "How thoughtful of you. And where is Celia today?" Here it was, the moment when I could either deflect the question or start the process of rewriting the narrative. "She's spending some time with her parents," I said. "We're taking a break to reassess our priorities." Janet's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Oh my, I'm so sorry to hear that." She wasn't sorry at all, of course. She was thrilled to be the first to learn about trouble in the Collins marriage. "These things happen," I said with a shrug. "Fortunately, I have good friends to help me through it." I put my arm around Noelle's shoulders, a gesture that was both protective and possessive. She leaned into me naturally, like we'd been doing this for years instead of hours. "Well," Janet said, clearly filing away every detail for later distribution, "I'm sure everything will work out for the best." After she left, dragging her companions toward other potential sources of information, Noelle looked up at me with amusement. "That was well played. By tomorrow, the entire neighborhood will know that you're not sitting at home crying into your beer." "Good. Let them talk." The folk trio began their set with a cover of "The Night We Met," that was both beautiful and painfully appropriate. Other couples around us swayed together, lost in their own worlds of shared experience and mutual affection. "Dance with me," Noelle said, standing and extending her hand. "Here, in front of everyone?" "Especially in front of everyone." I took her hand and pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, something floral and uncomplicated that didn't require a marketing campaign to justify its existence. She fit against me perfectly, her head resting on my shoulder as we moved to music that spoke of second chances and roads not taken. "Warren," she whispered, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I may have encouraged Celia to be honest with you about her feelings for Trent." I stopped moving. "What do you mean?" She pulled back to look at me, her cheeks flushed with either embarrassment or guilt. "Last month, when she was going crazy, trying to decide what to do, I told her that you deserved to know the truth, that sneaking around was only going to make things worse. You told her to confess?" "I told her to be honest. I didn't expect her to do it on your anniversary, but—" She shrugged. "Maybe I hoped that if she finally admitted what she was doing, you'd realize what kind of person she really is." The implications hit me like a wave. Noelle hadn't just been a passive observer in the dissolution of my marriage. She'd been an active participant, pushing Celia toward the confession that had freed me from a relationship that was slowly suffocating both of us. "Are you angry?" she asked. I considered the question seriously. Should I be angry? Noelle had manipulated the situation to serve her own interests, pushing my wife toward a confession that would ultimately benefit her. It was calculated, strategic, and completely ruthless. It was also exactly what I would have done in her position. "No," I said finally. "I'm impressed." She smiled then, the kind of smile that held secrets and promises in equal measure. "Good, because I have another confession to make." "I'm listening." "I've been planning this for months, not the specifics, but I've been waiting for Celia to show her true colors, and I've been positioning myself to be here when she did." "Positioning yourself how?" "The late-night texts checking on you. The conversations about your marriage where I played the concerned friend. The way I made sure to be available whenever Celia was too busy with work or Trent to pay attention to you." I stared at her, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not the sweet elementary school teacher who baked cookies and graded papers. Not the loyal friend who'd stood by Celia through 5 years of marriage. But a woman who'd identified what she wanted and systematically worked to get it. "You orchestrated this entire thing." "I created opportunities. Celia made her own choices." The music swelled around us, other couples lost in their own romantic bubbles, while I processed the revelation that my wife's best friend had been playing a long game that made my own revenge fantasies look amateur. "Why?" I asked. "Because she didn't deserve you. Because I did. Because sometimes you have to create your own happy ending instead of waiting for someone else to write it for you." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Derek. "They just left together. His car. Thought you should know." I showed the text to Noelle, who read it without surprise. "Right on schedule," she said. "You expected this?" "Warren, Trent Parker is a 36-year-old man who owns a gym and posts shirtless selfies with motivational quotes. He's not looking for a deep emotional connection. He's looking for validation and conquest. Celia represents both, a married woman who left her husband for him. And when the novelty wears off? It already is. Trust me." As if summoned by her words, my phone rang. Celia's name appeared on the screen like a ghost from my recent past. "Answer it," Noelle said. "Put it on speaker." I hesitated for a moment, then swiped to accept the call. "Hello, Celia." "Warren." Her voice sounded strained, like she'd been crying or arguing or both. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere?" I looked at Noelle, who was watching me with the intensity of a chess player calculating her next move. "I'm a little busy right now. Can it wait?" "Busy with what?" I'm at the farmer's market with a friend. A pause. What friend? Does it matter? Warren, please. I made a mistake. I need to see you. What kind of mistake? Another pause, longer this time. In the background, I could hear traffic and what sounded like someone talking, though I couldn't make out the words. I'll explain when I see you. Can you come home? Home? I thought you needed space to explore your feelings. I did. I do. I mean, she took a shaky breath. It's complicated. Most things are. Where are you right now? I'm at a gas station. Trent and I had lunch, and then we went back to his place and she trailed off, but I could fill in the blanks. Trent had gotten what he wanted, the validation of stealing another man's wife, and Celia had discovered that fantasy and reality were two very different things. And, I prompted, and he got a call from someone, a woman, someone he's been seeing. He told me that he thought I understood that he wasn't looking for anything serious right now. Noelle covered her mouth to hide a smile. The woman had clearly done her research on Trent Parker's relationship patterns. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. Not because I felt bad for Celia, but because the situation was unfolding exactly as I'd hoped it would. Warren, I want to come home. I want to work on us. This whole thing was a mistake, and I realize now that what we have is worth fighting for. What we have, I repeated. And what exactly is that? Our marriage, our life together, our future. The same marriage you wanted to take a break from yesterday? The same life you found so unsatisfying that you needed to explore other options? The same future you were willing to throw away for a man who posts gym selfies? You're being cruel. I'm being accurate. There's a difference. Noelle squeezed my hand, a gesture of support that felt more intimate than anything Celia and I had shared in months. I know you're angry, Celia continued, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can take a vacation. We can what? Pretend that you didn't just spend the afternoon in bed with your ex-boyfriend? Pretend that you didn't tell me 24 hours ago that you had feelings for someone else? Pretend that you didn't pack a bag and leave our home to pursue those feelings? It wasn't like that. What was it like exactly? Silence. Around us, the farmer's market continued its cheerful existence, families and couples enjoying a perfect autumn afternoon, while my marriage officially ended over speakerphone. I don't know, she said finally. I was confused. I thought I wanted something different, but I was wrong. No, Celia. You weren't wrong about wanting something different. You were wrong about thinking you could have it without consequences. What does that mean? I looked at Noelle, who nodded encouragingly. It means that while you were exploring your feelings, I was exploring mine too. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I'm not the same man you left yesterday. I'm not going to be here waiting whenever you decide to come home from your adventures. Warren, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. You should be terrified. Because for the first time in 5 years, you don't know what I'm going to do next. I hung up before she could respond. The farmer's market continued around us, but something had shifted. The afternoon felt charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. How do you feel? Noelle asked. Like I just jumped off a cliff. Any regrets? I thought about it seriously. Celia would go home to her parents' house and tell them that I'd been cruel and unreasonable. She'd probably call her friends and paint herself as the victim of a husband who couldn't forgive a moment of weakness. She'd rewrite history to make herself the injured party in our failed marriage. And for the first time in years, I didn't care what story she told or who believed it. None, I said. Not a single one. Noelle stood on her tiptoes and kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Around us, the world continued its normal rhythm, but I felt like everything had changed in the space of a heartbeat. When we broke apart, she was smiling. So what happens now? Now, I said, we go home. together, and we let everyone see exactly what Celia threw away. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made you believe in new beginnings. I woke up in my own bed for the first time in months without the sound of Celia's alarm going off at 6:30, followed by an hour of hair and makeup preparation that turned our bedroom into a staging area for corporate warfare. Instead, I woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon drifting up from the kitchen. Noelle stood at my stove, wearing one of my old college t-shirts and a pair of pajama pants she'd apparently packed in the overnight bag she'd retrieved from her apartment the night before. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was humming something while she cooked. "Morning," she said without turning around. "Hope you don't mind that I raided your refrigerator." "Not at all, though I should warn you, Celia kept it pretty bare. She didn't cook much." "I noticed. Good thing I stopped at the grocery store last night while you were in the shower." She had indeed stopped at the store. The refrigerator now contained actual food instead of Celia's usual collection of diet yogurt, leftover takeout, and expensive wine. Real eggs, real bacon, fresh fruit, and vegetables that weren't pre-packaged for convenience. "You work fast," I said, accepting the cup of coffee she handed me. "I'm efficient. There's a difference." My phone, charging on the counter, showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Celia, but a few were from her parents and friends who'd apparently been recruited for the campaign to bring me to my senses. "Popular morning," Noelle observed. I scrolled through the messages, noting the progression from pleading to angry to desperate and back to pleading. The most recent, sent at 6:47 a.m., simply said, "Please call me, we need to talk." She's persistent. I'll give her that. She's panicking. There's a difference. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 o'clock. Through the front window, I could see Celia's BMW in the driveway, and Celia herself standing on the porch in the kind of outfit she wore when she needed to project authority and competence. Professional blazer, designer jeans, shoes that cost more than most people's monthly car payment. "Should I hide?" Noelle asked. "Why would you hide? This is where you live now." She smiled at that, the kind of smile that suggested she'd been hoping to hear those words. I opened the door to find Celia looking like she hadn't slept much. Her makeup was perfect, as always, but it couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes or the tension around her mouth. "Warren, we need to talk." "Good morning to you too, Celia. How was your night?" "Can I come in?" "Of course.